Okay, this is section 8.4D. Solve multi-step equations with variables on both sides of the equal sign. Okay, so procedure should be still use the distributive property or the reciprocal if it's a fraction. Combine all like terms. So if there's multiple terms on one side of the equal sign, still combine them. Then what's new is right here. So you're going to collect all of the variables on one side of the equal sign and then all the constant terms or the numbers on the other side of the equal sign. And then usually there should be just one step left to solve, which is usually either multiplying or dividing. Okay, so for example, if we have 7 minus 8x equals 4x minus 17, we want to get the constant terms on one side of the equal sign and the variable terms on the other. So it doesn't matter which one goes in which direction. I usually try to make it so that I'm adding so that I don't end up with negative numbers. But either way, you would get the right answer. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and add 8x to the other side so that I can keep my x positive. So now I'm left with 7 equals, because negative 8x plus 8x, that goes away. 7 equals 4x plus 8x is 12x minus 17. And then I got to get all the constants on the other side, so I'm going to add 17 to both sides. And so I end up with 24 equals 12x. And then to get x by itself, I'm going to divide by 12. So 24 divided by 12 is 2. So I end up with 2 equals x, which is the same thing as x equals 2. And we can still plug it back in to make sure that it's correct. Okay, so if you plug it in, you do end up with negative 9 equals negative 9. So we know that x equals 2 is correct. Alright, for another example, in this case we're going to have to distribute or use the reciprocal before we can get all the variables on one side. So either way will work. In this case I'm going to go ahead and distribute because the 4 will work nicely with 16x and 60. Alright, so I'm going to bring down the left side. 9x minus 5 equals 16 divided by 4 becomes 4x. 60 divided by 4 is 15. So now I have an equation that looks just like the last slide. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just get all the x's on the left. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. Okay, so anytime you're moving across the equal sign, you're moving an entire term, you have to be adding or subtracting. You can't multiply or divide. So notice when I want to get the x to the other side, I'm going to subtract 4x because it's positive. On the last problem, I had a negative 2x or whatever it was, so I had to add 2x to both sides. So when you're moving across the equal sign, you're only adding or subtracting, and you're just doing the opposite of whatever that term is. So now I have 9x minus 4x is 5x. Minus 5 equals 15. Go ahead and add 5 to both sides, so I get 5x equals 20. Divide by 5, and so x equals 4. And go ahead on your paper and plug it back in and make sure that it works. Okay, so when solving equations, we also have some special cases, and those are the identity or an equation that has no solution. So an equation is going to be an identity if it's true for all real numbers. So if that means that if you end up with a statement that's true, but it can't be solved any further, then your answer is all real numbers. If you end up in an equation where it's telling you something that's not true, then you write no solution. Okay, for example, we have 2x plus 10 equals 2 times parentheses x plus 5. So remember, first thing I have to do is distribute. So I get 2x plus 10 on this side equals 2 times x, which is 2x, plus 2 times 5, which is 10. And you may already see that I end up with the left side equal to the right side. So at this point, I already know that it's going to be all real numbers, which that's another way to write it. But just to show you what happens, let me go ahead and try to solve. So if I want to move all the x's on the left side, I'm going to subtract 2x because this is a positive 2x. So minus 2x. Well, 2x minus 2x, it just goes away. I end up with 0, or 0 plus 10, and then I end up with a statement that says 10 equals 10. Well, that's true. So that is also what tells me that I have all real numbers. And what that means is that you could plug in absolutely any number for x, and this equation would still be true. So you could try to plug in any number for x. Doesn't matter if it's positive, negative, decimal fraction, you will still end up with a true statement in the end. And that's what it means to have all real numbers as your solution. Alright, so last example, 3x equals 3 times parentheses x plus 4. Again, first thing is we have to distribute. So bring down the left side. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 4 is 12. And you might look at this and realize that there's no way that that can be true. So it's going to be no solution. Okay? But if you want to make sure, again, let's move all the x's to the left side. So since that's a positive 3x, I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. But then 3x minus 3x is 0. And now I have a statement that says 0 equals 12. And there's no way that that's true. So since I have a statement that's false, that's how I know that I'm going to write no solution. Because it doesn't matter what you plug in for x, absolutely nothing will make this equation true. And that's it for this section.